So I wanted to hop on here and share a quick tip that popped into my mind the other day, and it has a lot to do with how to be more productive as a student leader. And I'm going down the angle of student leader because this can apply to your academics when you're studying for your classes and exams. It can apply to when you're writing your papers or working on your assignments, but it can also apply to any tasks that you have and any extracurriculars that you're involved in. If you're running events for an organization, if you have to type out notes for a meeting, or if you have any tasks that you have to do with things that happen outside of class, this can be really helpful for performing well in those areas too. Now, this tip is a little bit different in the sense that it's more of a perspective or a sort of strategy to approaching how you work as opposed to anything specific that you would do. Now, there will be tangible things that you do if you apply this, however, those will come after the point. So this is kind of the foundation. And the idea is simple in theory, and it's basically to set up a process for how you work. By this I mean having a structure, preferably flexible, but nonetheless a structure for how you approach whatever tasks you need to work on. So for example, if you're sitting down to study, you can set up a process for approaching your studying. Now this is where you get into the specifics and nitty-gritty. By setting up a process, you can specify, okay, when I sit down to study, I need to define what chapters, modules, or tasks I need to do. So I'm going to create a checklist for whatever I'm going to accomplish when I sit down to study. And the checklist feeds into the process because it's how you start your study session. You can't sit down and study unless you have that checklist. So by setting up a process in which you start with a checklist, you're ensuring that you're putting yourself in the mindset to study, and you're doing so effectively with the time that you have. Now, the idea of the process came from this book called Chasing Excellence by Ben Bergeron. And it is a book about athlete development, but it has a lot of really practical and beneficial advice when it comes to building a process or becoming as high performing person as you can be. Obviously, in the world of athletics, they need to be at their highest performing level in order to win. But the lessons in this book can be applied regardless of the scenario you're in. Whether you are an athlete, whether you're a student, whether you're involved in some sort of work, the lessons here can be really beneficial. And one of the chapters talks about developing a process and how beneficial that can be for accomplishing whatever you need to and accomplishing it well. Now, like I mentioned before, this can be applied in a number of ways. If you are studying for your classes, you can set up your process to make sure you're studying at the best of your capability. If you were involved in some sort of leadership role where you have to plan an event, you can apply the idea of developing a process here to schedule time where you sit down to work on the event. If you're using a checklist, you can map out the things that you need to do each week or each month when it comes to planning that event. And you can set up the process so that way when you complete whatever you're doing, you can give yourself a reward.
It's like a reward.
You can set yourself up for the next tasks that are going to come. Or if you haven't finished everything you need to in that session, you can set up a process to make sure that those priorities get put at the top of your to-do list for the next one. It's kind of the vague definition of a process. I'm specifically not including a lot of details for this part because I want it to be something that you define for yourself. Your process could be every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 5, you go to your campus library and you sit down and you work through practice questions that you develop throughout the week. If it's for your extracurriculars, it could be something like event planning. So sitting down 2 hours every week to map out what you want to do for your event and the different parts of it you need to make sure that you cover. This is in contrast to what I see a lot of people do, which is focus on those sort of externals, i.e. I want to have a really good event with like 500 attendees, or I want to make sure I get an 85% on the assignment, but they have no sort of strategy to get there. And this is where developing a process can be really beneficial for you. Now, when it comes to getting into the nitty-gritty and developing a process, I decided to pull out my notes on Deep Work by Cal Newport. And the research and strategies that he has in the book focus on developing a sort of ritual for when you sit down to work. Now, the ritual is really dependent on you. For example, you might really enjoy some sort of berry tea. So every time you sit down for a very deep study or work session, you brew yourself some berry tea and then you get ready to work. You might like to light candles, like I do every time I film a video, as a way to get myself in the mindset of filming and also add a backdrop here. You might play a very specific study playlist, or you might chew a different flavor of gum for the different classes that you're studying. However you approach it, the idea here is to pick certain things that put you in the mindset of work or studying or whatever you're doing, and then do those anytime you sit down to study or work or do whatever you have to do. This will help you create your own process, and that process will be really beneficial for you to get in the zone, so to speak, to accomplish whatever you have to or to work on whatever you have to. Now, my advice with this is to be flexible and be reasonable here. You don't want to overdo it and add too many things into your process where it's basically not replicable. Maybe you're studying at a friend's house, or maybe you are moving halfway across the country for some sort of conference, or maybe you're working in a hotel room. Whatever the scenario is, you want to make sure it's as flexible and as practical as possible. In this case, it might benefit you to develop sort of different rituals for different scenarios you're in. So if you're traveling, you can develop a very sort of flexible and simple process or ritual to get yourself in the zone. And then if you're at home in your sort of workspace, you can develop a more robust process or schedule to get yourself in the zone. Or if you're studying at a friend's house or in a library or any of the different scenarios, you could apply something else like buying a green tea before you get to your friend's place. Or brewing a green tea. You don't need to spend money all the time. But that's kind of the idea. It's that creating a process can be really helpful for you when you take on a wide variety of tasks that you would typically take on during school. Especially when that's amplified by getting involved in extracurriculars where you have other stuff you need to do. Developing a process can be really helpful for tackling a lot of those. Personally, now that I'm out of school, I like to apply this in my outreach. One of the things that I do for my career development is I like to reach out to different industry professionals and experts in various fields that I might be interested in getting involved in. And rather than trying to speak to a certain person, I try to set up a process where every week I send out anywhere from 1 to 3 cold emails or LinkedIn requests asking if someone can answer a few of my questions. And what this does is it sets me up to succeed in the long term because I'm not getting too caught up in things that are out of my control, like will this person respond or not, or whether or not people are accepting my requests whatsoever. It shifts my focus into something I can control, sending out those emails on a regular basis. And this way I'm able to build a larger network, connect with a lot of people, and then accomplish what I need to over a longer period of time. And I think this process can be very beneficial for you in school, regardless of whether or not you're studying for your classes, or you're working on assignments, or you're taking care of your responsibilities in your extracurricular roles. So that's a quick idea. Let me know what you think. If you developed your own process for accomplishing work, then leave a comment below and share how yours works. Other than that, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Thank you for tuning into this video. If you enjoyed it, then I would love if you gave the video a like. If you want to stay up to date with me as I talk more about student life and civic engagement, then you can hit the subscribe button. I think it's going to be over here. I put the little circle thingy. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in, and take care.